moving at all from there, which is one definition of a pentatonic box. Now the whole riff of there is the rhythm way all the way through.
I suppose it was a good introduction to the band because it, in a way, encapsulated all the good points about Queen, the best things that we remember about them, the vocal harmonies and Brian May's amazing attacking guitar playing. So right away it was a taster for what was to come, and of course people never dreamt that the band would expand in the way that it did. But it was a good record, although even though it wasn't a hit, it served to, it kind of flagged up to the record industry and the public, we're here.
One of the central features of the sound that Queen showcased on Keep Yourself Alive was Brian May's extraordinary guitar. May had built the guitar in 1963 with the help of his father, and it was this custom design that allowed him to find his unique sound.
It was built by Brian and his father. I think they finished it in 66, 67, something like that. And they were both, I mean, Brian's got a PhD in astrophysics, so he's not exactly the thickest man in the world, and nor with his father, apparently. But this is a Burns, it's a Brian May signature model, and it's as close as you can get without spending £5,000 on one built by an Australian guy called Greg Fryer, which you also can do if you want to. What makes it unique are these, which are the pickups. These are Burns trisonic pickups. They're exactly the same as the one that Brian has in his original. And that would be fine. Burns trisonic used by the Shadows, by you name it, any band in the 60s and even the 50s as well. On Brian's guitar and also on this one, they are operated by these switches here. These three are on and off switches. The other thing he's most used to is these, which is an AC30 Vox amplifier, very famous, Shadows, Beatles, The Who, Yardbirds, you name it, Jeff Beck, everybody used these. Brian continues to do so, and part of the way that he gets his sound is he has the thing on full blast. Now, it's only 30 watts, but it is the loudest thing you've ever heard of, so we won't do it very often in there. Now, the other trick to it is this, is that, which is a treble booster. This is a modern one. It's exactly the same as Brian uses, although his is red rather than blue, fact fans. It's built by an Australian guy called Greg Fryer, who has built a lot of copies of the original, as we said, and also maintains Brian's original #1 guitar, did so for the tour that they've just done. So the idea with this is that it boosts this, an AC30 amp, which is quite a clean thing, into full overdrive. And the best thing to do is I'll just show you, shall I? Okay. So, with just this pickup on, and the treble booster all the way off, turn the amp on, yep, all the way off, it sounds like this. No, it's not exactly the Brian May sound that we know. His main rhythm sound is these two together, which is that. So if you have that, again, the treble booster is almost all the way off. The sound you have is this. Now, part of it, having these two together, warms it up, as we can hear. Compare again the thin sound and the rhythm sound. So we're nearly getting there. We're not quite there yet. So there's two more things to say. For the main sound, this thing's on full, which we'll do in a second. The other thing is his pick, which normally it's a sixpence. An old English sixpence that you can't, as I've discovered, you really have trouble finding them. So this is an Australian 5-cent piece. The reason I'm using this is because it's the same dimensions as a sixpence. Now the main thing with this, Brian uses this to get as close a feeling to his hand to the string as possible. A lot of guitar players use very floppy plastic ones, so you can do that. Brian is the absolute opposite, and that also helps with the sound. It's a very, very emotional, intimate, as you can have with two bits of metal, contact between the strings. Now also it's serrated, and I'll show you that as well. But Brian May's main guitar sound is treble boost all the way up. These two pick up together, and both of them are in phase, so I'm not mucking about with any of these switches. And it sounds like this. Very full indeed.
Queen's self-titled debut album was released in July of 1973. The album made little impact with either critics or the record-buying public, though following a successful winter tour in support of Mott the Hoople, a large section of the music press began to reappraise Queen as a band of promise. EMI and Trident felt Queen should make a prompt return to the studio, this time with a sizable budget, and as the band continued to perform Queen 1, they were also developing ideas for their follow-up album, Queen 2.
The first album has the basic elements of what became the Queen sound, but I think they amplified it and exaggerated it, and the bigger and more preposterous it became, the better it became in a way. And perhaps that first album takes itself a little bit too seriously. And the great thing about Queen is they actually came, and this was to me, their redeeming feature, they actually came to have a quite profound sense of their own absurdity.
I think you have to take Queen 1 and Queen 2 almost as a package. Yes, they were recorded at different times. It was almost phase 1 of Queen's world domination plan. And whilst I would say Queen 2 shows perhaps a more comfortable and more confident band, knowing exactly where they were in the studio, I don't think that necessarily Queen 1 lets them down whatsoever. I think Queen 1 has some wonderful moments. And I think you put the two together and you have the start of something very special. So I would say, yes, Queen 2, inevitably with a band going into their second album, shows more confidence. But Queen 1 is equally as good.
I think with the early albums, the first couple definitely show Queen in a light which they kind of moved away from later on. There are a lot more, if not kind of standard kind of rock-based tunes on there. It's definitely kind of the rock influence that's to the fore, and I think they're great. I mean, the great British buying public kind of took a little while to kind of warm up to them. You know, critics were never that enamoured of the first album particularly. I don't think it even went top 20 over here, so it wasn't an overnight success.
The band resolved to tackle the ambivalence with which Queen 1 had been received by refining a new and dynamic image. They developed Queen 2 in an atmosphere of frenzied creativity, in which Brian's overdriven guitars formed the basis of a more textured sound and fantastical image. Queen's big break came on the